You're going to know in just a few minutes what is it that they carry, what are the stories they're willing to share, what are the vulnerabilities. We've been talking about vulnerabilities since morning. What are the vulnerabilities they're willing to actually demonstrate right here on stage today? Am I right? Yes. So this is no ordinary panel. I know it's after lunch, and I know we just learned a lot, and I know it gets a little long, the day, but right from the beginning of this panel till the end, and then what's coming after that, is power-packed. Yesterday we had a little discussion, a prep call. None of them needed a prep call, I can tell you that. And me, I always go off script. So that's going to happen. But we still spoke and spoke and spoke as if you were all there already, as if we had an audience. So we just went on discussing and relating and bonding and speaking so many things, getting deeper and deeper into the subject of psychological safety. Now, if I just try to culminate everything that we've spoken about since morning, some of you were not there in the morning. Sister Shivani left the audience mesmerized. Everybody was in a trance. Everybody was in a meditative state. To me, what resonated a lot was two things she said. One, she said, what you really inspire your team with is your vibration. Not energy, vibration. And that to me is a little bit of the spiritual connotation that Mercedes brought out in her session, that are we willing to connect leadership with spirituality as well today? Or is it still considered fluffy in the workplace? The other thing that she said very powerful was that if we want our children and our youth to create a Viksit Bharat 2047, seeing the golden Bharat that we want, how are we sending our employees back home? To their children? Are we to their families? Are we sending them as happy human beings or not? And that really made me reflect back on our yesterday's discussion. And to think about, especially the constant dilemma of psychological safety versus performance.
And there were techniques, tools there to make sure we communicate things the right way. See, all of us are human beings. Nobody wants to be criticized. Nobody wants to be pulled up, irrespective of what the actual performance is. The question is, are the leaders taught the idea of psychological safety? In none of our feedback, even in our ESAT surveys, you'll find a question, hey, does your manager do A, B, C, and D? But never a question around, do you feel psychologically safe? Explicitly, it isn't asked, right? So one, there's a question of not knowing what safety. The other question is, I determine what's good for me, and I apply that framework on others. That may or may not be true. Third, the whole idea of, hey, but you were supposed to understand my intent. Now, this is a very common saying that people judge themselves by their intent and others by their actions, right? So the question, hey, I'm acting to give you psychological safety, but I'm sorry, as far as intent, you're supposed to get my intent, even if I don't behave so. So the question is, unless the intent is translated into actions that I can communicate very clearly, formally, even in a formal setting, there's always a gap between intent and act.
So psychological safety became the buzzword. If you look at it, it became the most searched word. And what it says is that it is the culture where people feel safe to express their viewpoint, to express their new ideas, to fail, to provide pushbacks. Are they able to do that?
I realize that sometimes language, I don't mean English and Hindi, the language of communication, the way you express yourself, the way you be good without wanting to look good. Okay, because most of us spend most of our lives, and especially in the corporate space, trying to look good. Look good to your bosses, look good to your friends, look good, always look as if you're doing everything. But in the corporate space or in the personal space, I don't think corporates are any different from society at large. We borrow from the same society that individuals, that very kind people live, but also where the horrors of society live. So we don't come from, and the employees of any of the companies over here don't come from another planet.
I think it's a very real aspect of what we deal with every day. And language, I think you spoke about language not just being English, Hindi or whatever other choice that we make, but essentially all the non-verbal cues that go with it. Everything that you've said before the meeting, after the meeting, in between the meeting, you know, everything is read and perceived and processed, right? So it's never what is just said in that moment alone. And like you rightly said, choose the best words, help AI perfect it, but still the human quality in me allows me to perceive. Also allows me to send signals where if I am not comfortable with you, you will very definitely know it in the first 10 seconds of our interaction. And similarly, if there is a certain positivity in the intent.
So the first thing what I feel important is that have we been able to really knit this in the fabric of the organization, or are we really attempting to do certain things which are very, very superfluous and not lasting?
Right.
So when we start the initiatives around inclusivity, or the diversity, or anything for that matter, you do the best of the embroidery on the best of the fabric. So the fabric needs to really be very clean, well knit, well stitched, and then the work can happen on top of it. So within the organization, it's important to create a culture wherein it is ingrained in the people that respect for individuals, respect for what people bring to the table, acceptance of the fact that everybody cannot be really holistic and everybody has a chink in the armors. If those vulnerabilities are built as a part of a culture, then I think acceptance for this becomes far more easier. And why I say that, you know, in the organizations, Dr. Neeru, we believe in a hero culture, right?
Yeah.
And if you create cultures which are driven towards hero worship, driven towards people being looked up by doing certain things which are very, very lofty, then consciously or unconsciously you create culture wherein people are incentivized to demonstrate those behaviors.
That's where it starts, from you. I mean, others can only give you what you're ready to receive, I feel. And therefore, it's really important to first give safety and security and self-care to yourself, so that your own vibrations, like you started what Sister Shivani, which I sadly missed the conversation today. However, she talked about vibrations, and that's how it needs to start, that I'm ready to give myself the respect and the love that I deserve.
Whole generational aspect, right? And now with multi-generations at the workplace, a lot of what we are used to is hierarchical, control-driven. So a lot of us, at least 10, 12 of our years of our career, we've somewhere gotten used to it. The younger generation's already challenging us with all of that, saying why.